Welcome to the TMRN Time Monk Radio Network. I'm Jules, and today is Sunday, the 21st of August 2011, or the 22nd in Asia. Today we have renowned commodities trader Jim Rogers. Jim's websites are jimrogers.com and jimrogers1.blogspot.com. Hi Jim, and welcome to the WebBot Forum Roundtable.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, Jules. Just one slight correction. That second website you mentioned is not mine. It's someone who set up a website in my name. There apparently a lot of people have set up websites and Facebooks and everything else in my name. I only have the one. That's not terrible. I mean, that's so important, but just a slight correction. Anyway, I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you, sir. It's jimrogers.com. Thanks. The WebBot Forum administrator and producer of the show is Fox, and he'll be doing the recording and technical support of the show. Several members of the forum were kind enough to join us tonight. They include members Green Meadow, Plain, and Turd Ferguson. For listeners, this interview will assume you have a good understanding of Jim's work, which includes his books and numerous interviews with Jim on YouTube. Again, Jim's website is jimrogers.com. This interview will be available on YouTube for free on the WebBot Forum channel and at the website webbotforum.com. Jim, are you comfortable and ready for the interview, sir?
Yes. Just one word of note. I am on my bicycle, so if you hear me huffing and puffing, I'm not having a heart attack. Or if I am, you'll be the first to know.
Yes, and we can call, I don't even know what number to call in Singapore. Anyway, the first question we have is from Turd Ferguson.
Jim, good morning, I should say, in Singapore. Thank you very much for joining us. It is really a pleasure to get a chance to visit with you.
My pleasure.
I'm sorry, it falls to me to ask you just a couple of quick questions about current events. You're certainly an expert in all things commodity, and there are so many interesting goings-on in the world, specifically after what took place in Washington a couple of weeks ago with the debt ceiling negotiations and what ultimately became the raise of the debt ceiling. With the struggling U.S. economy and the struggling global economy and the Euro crisis, there's a lot of questions these days if the Fed is going to initiate another round of quantitative easing or perhaps some reverse repurchase arrangements, something to get banks lending and get some more liquidity out there. They have a meeting in Jackson Hole, I think, next weekend. I just wanted to get your thoughts as to what might come out of that.
Thanks, Terry. Well, they already have started quantitative easing. They're trying to disguise it. They don't want to admit that they're doing it, but they've announced that they're going to keep interest rates low for 2 years. The only way you can do that is to interfere in the markets or, go into the market and keep rates down. You can't just say it out loud. That doesn't make it happen. So they're already in the markets holding interest rates down, and they have to stay in the markets to keep interest rates down because interest rates eventually are going to go much higher after all this absurdity. Now, even if they ever announce something, I'm sure they're going to continue to try to disguise it and call it something else. They've already fooled a lot of people with this most recent announcement. I don't know, maybe they'll call it cupcakes. Who knows what they'll call it? But they're going to intervene. They're going to do their best. It's just leading to the demise and the disaster for all of us.
Well, and I guess that's a good segue into the second question, in that it would seem to me that we are rapidly approaching the end game of unlimited fiat money and Keynesian economics. And one of the signs of that we maybe saw last week with the announcement out of Venezuela that they wanted to repatriate their gold and bring it back. And I've wondered for some time now if individual countries won't look to back their own currency with hard assets, with gold, silver, and other things, kind of preparing for the world where the U.S. does not have the reserve currency anymore. Do you think that move out of Venezuela is the beginning of a trend? Is it something that we should all be keeping our eyes on, or is it not really significant at all?
Well, no, it's certainly significant, especially if they want their gold back and they find out they don't have it.
That's right.
It'll be quite a turmoil if all of a sudden the banks say, oh, we don't have that gold anymore. We can't find it, because a lot of gold has been mixed with other gold. And so we'll see. It may just mean that more and more people do want to hold their own gold in their own hands. I would suspect so. We're coming into more and more turmoil. More and more banks will be going bankrupt. And last thing you want is for your gold to be in a vault of a bank which goes bankrupt or which has to suspend redemptions. So I suspect you'll see more of it.
And in the end, do you expect other sovereign nations to maybe band together with regional reserve currencies, or will just nations themselves? You're close to China. I know that's part of the reason you're in Singapore. Do you expect the Chinese to back the renminbi at some point with gold?
Well, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. It may happen if and when the world really sinks into terrible crisis, and we certainly have more, at least semi-crises coming in the future. And at some point, the world may be so in such a catastrophe that the world will reach for gold. I don't see anybody doing that anytime soon. Gold does impose restrictions on politicians, and politicians don't want anything that imposes restrictions. If it happened, it would be because the public, the people, insisted on something like gold. There probably will come a time like that again, but I'm afraid that's not anytime soon. Or I shouldn't say I'm afraid. I should say I don't think that's anytime soon.
Right. Thank you, Jim.
Jim, it's Jules here. What type of crises do you see? One of the things we watch, obviously, I believe, if not recently, but the death cross, the Dow 50-day moving average, crossing on the downside of the 200-day moving average. So in terms of the mini crises that you see in the future, what do you think could possibly take place in the next few weeks, say, for example?
Well, I'm not a very good market timer, Jules. In fact, I'm a horrible market timer. So I don't know about the next few weeks. But I will say that we're going to see more bankruptcies, more turmoil in the currency markets, especially in the currency markets. The largest creditor nations in the world now are all in Asia: China, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore. This is where the assets are. You know who the debtors are and where they are. Those kinds of imbalances are normally sorted out in the currency markets and other markets. Used to be in the gold market, but since we're not on the gold standard anymore, it's in the currency markets. And you're going to see a lot more turmoil. You're going to see more inflation. You're going to see more stock market collapses. No, these are perilous times.
Thanks, Jim. Speaking of creditor nations, China is a great culture, but we continually hear from the mainstream financial channels and even alternative media like Jim Rickards that they are hamstrung to the US government because of their large reserves of treasury bills. I believe 1.16 trillion as of the last Treasury International Capital Report in June. Also from that report, it seems that China was more or less the only one buying long-term treasury, with the first net sale of US paper since 2009 May. China has a rich and long history, and I would think that the Chinese government would know what was coming down the pipeline for the US dollar and have some sort of exit strategy or end game. What is your opinion of the China versus US situation, treasury reserve situation, and China's end game in getting out of the dollar and not left holding the bag?
Well, it's a very good question. China has certainly slowed down its purchases of treasuries, U.S. treasuries, compared to where they were before. And I suspect you're going to see less and less in the future. In the meantime, China has a couple of trillion, with a T, of other assets, and they are continuing to diversify into other things. You probably know they're buying up as much of Africa and South America and Central Asia as they can. They're buying mines, plantations, oil fields, because they think that there's a shortage of raw materials coming. I happen to think the same thing. So they're doing their best to prepare. They're being good capitalists. In fact, they're being extremely good capitalists. So I think you're going to see more and more of their assets going into things like real assets or perhaps other currencies. More likely real assets than other currencies, but maybe some of both. Now, yes, if the U.S. does stop paying or reneges in some way, China will suffer. The whole world will suffer. The U.S. will suffer more, but I'd rather be the creditor than the debtor any day, even if I'm the stiffed creditor, even if I'm the creditor who has a deadbeat on my hands, because that means I do have other assets and other options.
And that's probably why Joe Biden's there at the moment. The next question is from Turd Ferguson.
All right, Jim. Many regular folks are turning to commodities and hard assets in order to protect their life savings and their purchasing power. But investing in commodities, as you know, is significantly different from investing in paper assets. And a lot of folks are prone to making what we call beginner mistakes. I just thought, with all of your experience, are there some pointers, some tips that you might pass along to all those who are getting into this game for the first time?
Well, let me first say that commodities are a lot simpler than stocks. I didn't say they were easy. I just said they're a lot simpler. Nobody can understand Toyota or IBM, not even the CEO. You know, they have hundreds of thousands of employees and suppliers and markets and factories. Nobody can, and governments, nobody can understand most companies. But cotton is fairly simple. Again, Turd, I didn't say it was easy.